In this video, we are going to pick up where we left off with the Windows Fundamentals. This is a part of the Windows and Active Directory Fundamentals module that is a part of the Cybersecurity 101, the CySec 101 pathway of TryHackMe. And in the last video, we covered the desktop, the file system, user account control, the control panel, settings, and of course the task manager. And we're going to attempt to provide an overview of some of the other utilities that are available in the Windows OS and the different methods that you can access those utilities. We have been given a virtual machine, which I've already started, that you can see on the right hand side of the screen here, and we're going to open it up in a full screen in a little bit. You also have the opportunity to log in as a remote desktop. So if you're using RDP remote desktop from a Mac OS or a Linux machine, you can use X-Free RDP and just use these various connection details. However, you do need the OpenVPN connection to TryHackMe, so you're not going to just be able to do this by connecting. And then when you actually start your own virtual machine, the IP address that they're going to give you is going to be different. So this one is specific to the instance that I've been granted when I started this virtual machine. So this is going to be very different for you as well. And I believe that this is also, yes, this is another free room that is inside of the TryHackMe module for cybersecurity. So you don't even need to do any of those things. So if you have a Windows computer, you can just click along with what I already am going to be showing you, because most likely if you're running Windows 10 or Windows 11, it's going to be very similar to what I'm going to run over here. We're going to be running Windows 11, I believe, or Windows 10, excuse me. And all of these things should still be available in your version of Windows, so long as you have at least Windows 10 and above. If you want to log in via RDP, you can. If not, you can just register for a free account with TryHackMe and just get access to this room, because you don't need a paid subscription for this room. So that's all we got for the intro details here. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the first task, or officially the second task, but it's like the first actual task, which is about the system configuration. So let's get into system configuration. msconfig, which is also known as the system configuration utility, is for advanced troubleshooting, and the main purpose is to help diagnose startup issues. So if you look at the official documentation here, this is from Microsoft, so the learn.microsoft website. It'll show you everything that you need to know about the msconfig, which is a good amount of information actually. So if you really want to dig deep into it, you're more than welcome to do so, because we're going to be just going over an overview of this. There are a few different ways that you can launch it. My favorite is to just search for it. So if you actually go inside of the search box and just type in msconfig or type in system configuration, it'll pop up and then you can get into it. And the utility has 5 tabs across the top of it, and these are the names for those tabs. So you can see General, Boot, Services, Startup, and Tools. In the General tab, we can select what devices and services for Windows that you can load upon boot, meaning when you start the computer, what is it going to load? And the options are normal, diagnostic, or selective. In the boot tab, we can define various boot options for the operating system. So safe boot, for example, or minimal alternative, all those things are subcategories under safe boot. You can say no GUI, so no graphic user interface, just a command line. You want to load the boot log or the base video or the OS boot information. All of those things can all be under your boot. The services tab lists all these services configured for the system regardless of their state, so whether or not they're running. A service is a special type of application that runs in the background, so this is very different from software that you see running in the foreground. All of these things are running in the background. So for example, the Amazon SSM agent in this screenshot is running, right? Everything else is stopped. AWS Light Guest Agent is also running. So it seems to be something with the Amazon server that is currently running on that particular screenshot on that machine. We have the Startup tab that you're not going to see anything interesting in our specific VM. This is for msconfig from the local machine of the creator of this room, which also doesn't show anything interesting. It just goes to the task manager. Microsoft advises using the task manager to manage, meaning to enable or disable any startup items. The system configuration utility is not a startup management program. So msconfig system configuration is not a startup management program. To do that, you can go to the task manager. If you open the task manager for the attached VM, you'll notice that the task manager doesn't show a startup tab. And then there's the list of various utilities that's under tools that you can run to configure the operating system further. There's a brief description of each tool. For example, about Windows displays Windows version information, system information, event viewer, programs, etc., etc., etc. All these things are under this sysconfig, msconfig utility, and you can get access to those. The selected command section, this will be a text box. So right here, you see this right here. This means this is the actual path to that specific tool. So let's actually look at what that would look like if we were to go inside of this machine. So if I click on the Windows button at the very bottom right here, I can actually start typing msconfig and it'll start searching for me. So if I just do msconfig, it'll start searching in the machine. You can also right click on the taskbar at the bottom right here and then go to search and then do show search box, and it'll show you the search box. So you can do that as well. And it essentially does the same thing. It just opens up this Windows icon that you see at the bottom, and then you can just type in msconfig, and then it'll show the, msconfig, there we go. And then we get the system configuration. And then once we open this up, we'll see that, you know, we have all the stuff that they just talked about in this video. And if we go to tools, we can see the path of these various commands. So for example, about Windows would be system32 winver.exe, which is the executable that will launch to get you details of this. So if I double click this, it should launch that executable, or I guess I need to click launch. So if I click launch, it'll launch that actual executable, which is the about Windows, etc., 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 which means that I can actually also take this path. Ideally, that's what I should be able to do. I can do this, I can copy this, and I can go into a file manager. So if I can just do file or file explorer, excuse me, I can open up the file explorer, and then at the top we have this path, and then we can just paste what we picked up right here inside of that and press enter, and it'll do the same exact thing. So it's the direct path to whatever the utility is, whatever the tool is. So if I click on programs, it'll show you the path for that. If I click on system properties, it'll be the path for that. So on and so forth. Sysinformation, msinfo.exe. So that's how you get the path. This is one way of getting the path. I should say it that way. This is one way of getting the path to the variety of different tools that are available on the msconfig utility. So there is that. Now, let's go further here. So we got all of these things, and we got some questions at the bottom right here. So to run a tool, we can launch it using the launch button, which we just did. So what is the name of the service that lists system internals as the manufacturer? So in a way to do that, we could actually just look at the description of all of these tools that were available for us. So the name of the service. So we go to services, we can see right here, and then it would say it lists system internals as the manufacturer. So we have the manufacturer right here, and I could just click that and organize these by alphabet, and then sysinternals, if you just do Z to A, so double click it so that the arrow is pointing downward, you can see PS shutdown has system internals as the manufacturer. It says who is the Windows license registered to. So if I want to see the Windows license registry, I can go under that information and try to find that. So let's see. So the way that we actually find that is by going to the About Windows tool, right? So this is where it was right here. We have About Windows, we launch it, and then once you launch that, it gives you the details of this particular machine. And at the bottom it says this product is licensed under yada 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 to Windows user. So there is that, and that's how we got that detail right here. Now it says, what is the command for Windows troubleshooting? So obviously this is the full command, but let's go find that detailed information. So we want Windows troubleshooting. And what we're going to do is we're going to go here, and under our tool name, we need to find Windows troubleshooting. So I just organize it by alphabet. So we go to W. Windows troubleshooting is right here. This is the full path for Windows troubleshooting, which is massive. So just highlight that, copy that, and then you can bring that over here and paste that over here. What command will open the control panel? And so it's control exe right here. The answer is the name of the executable, not the full path. So if I go here again and go over here and do control panel. So what do I want? I want services or tools control panel. So let's see what we can find. Now in this particular case, it's actually not listed under control panel, it's listed under system properties. And then when you look at it, it says control.exe, and then it takes you to the system. That would be the executable that they're looking for in this case. All right, and we are good with this particular section. So we are now going to move on to changing the user account control settings. This is also something else that's available through the system configuration msconfig. It was covered in detail in Windows Fundamentals 1. It really wasn't in that much detail. They're saying great detail. It definitely wasn't that much detail. You can definitely get more detail about your user account control, but what we can do is we can see a few other things about it. So the settings can be changed or even turned off entirely, which is not recommended. You can move the slider to see how the setting will change according to the UAC settings that Microsoft has on this particular setting. So you have always notify and never notify. Never notify essentially means that you're turning it off. It starts default over here. Notify me when apps try to make changes to my computer, and then always notify is obviously much stronger settings. So that's essentially it. So what we're trying to do is what is the command to open that, and the answer is the name of the executable file. So if we went over here and we want the user account or user account control, yeah, I believe that's what it is. So change UAC settings, that's the one that we're looking at. And then we see right here, this is the full executable, which is user account settings.exe. And then so what we can see when we launch it is these options. And then you have always notify me when apps try to install software. I make changes to Windows settings. This is the default one. This one is do not dim my desktop. So notify me only when apps try to make changes to my computer. Don't notify me when I make changes to the Windows settings. And then finally is never notify me when anything happens, which is not recommended. So this is the default right here that just notifies you other than notifying when the person makes changes to the settings. The actual user that's logged in makes changes to the settings. So that's all we got for change UAC. So let us go to computer management. This is another tool that's inside the msconfig utility. Comp mgmt is the executable for it. It has three primary sections. So you have system, tool, storage, and services and application. And you see it on the sidebar right here. And then you can expand each one of these and it opens up. System tools is the task scheduler, or one of the tools inside of system tools is task scheduler. The task scheduler can help you create and manage common tasks that the computer will run automatically at the times that you specify. A task can run an application, it can run a script that you create, it can do a bunch of different things. So it's a pretty useful interface for setting up automated tasks. And it can run at any point. So it can run on login, meaning boot. It can run at log off. When you log off, right before it logs off, it'll do what you want it to do. It can also be configured to run on a specific schedule, so every 5 minutes, daily, monthly, etc. To create a task, you just click on Create Basic Task under the actions in the right panel, and it'll go and do what you want it to do. The next event would be the event viewer, and this is something that we use a lot with security and looking at logs and trying to figure out what happened in incident response. It allows you to view events, right, that occurred on a computer. So the record could be seen as an audit trail that can be used to understand the activity of the computer system, and it's often used to diagnose problems and investigate actions executed on the system, so incident response. Event Viewer has three panes. The pane on the left provides the hierarchical tree. The pane on the right or in the middle will display the general view of what you're looking at, and on the right is the actions pane, for example, filtering. And these are the 5 levels of events, right? You have an error, you have a warning, information, success audit, or failed audit. And error is just something that happened, like a loss of data or something crashed. Warning is not necessarily significant, but it could be a future problem. For example, when a disk space is low, or when something happened that should not have happened, somebody trying to log into a system that they shouldn't have tried to been logged into. Information is just telling you what happened. So this successfully launched, or this was closed, so on and so forth. Success audit is a security access attempt that was successful. So this is very important. Success audit is in security. It's a specific security incident and it was successful. So a user successfully attempts to log on to the system and is successfully logged in. A failure audit is a security access attempt that failed. For example, somebody tries to log on to something or access something, and they didn't provide the correct login credentials. So these two are very important in the context of cybersecurity. This could be something that leads to a failure audit, for example. An error could potentially maybe be something, but it's more system related, so it could be a system crashing, etc. But these two are very, very important to us in the context of cybersecurity. And so just to show you what that looks like, because that's actually a very important thing for you to kind of view if you haven't seen already. And there's a full video that exists on the event viewer. It's on this channel particularly. So again, I keep closing out configuration, but what we're looking for is the event viewer, and I can just click on it and launch it, and it'll launch the event viewer for us. And this is exactly what they're talking about. So you have the left section here that you can go and look at these various series of logs, and if you click on it, they open up, or you can just do a drop down and same things open up. And if I go into here, I can double click this and that'll open up, or if I do the drop down, it's the same thing. So, and then you have the Windows logs, which is a very, very important series of events, especially in security, application, systems, so on and so forth. And you can see that it has massive numbers of events, so 3,000, etc., etc. And then so if you wanted to filter something, you can click on any of these, and from here you can filter the type of event that you want by going into view, or by actually doing a filter of the current log right here, and it will show you the filter of all of the logs or the log items inside of our Windows application log, for example. So that is our event viewer. And so what you see on the right hand side right here, these are considered the standard logs of the Windows logs. So you can look at the docs at Microsoft, obviously, and learn more about each one of those and the events that fall under them. And this is something else, again, that we do in incident response, where we try to find what events happened and what each event ID means, and how you can kind of reverse engineer that to find out what happened on the system. For more information about the event logs, we can go to the event log room, which we've already done. Let me just verify this, but I'm pretty sure that we've already done this room, and there should be, yep, and there should be a video on it, so you can definitely go check that video out as well if you want to skip ahead. It is one of the more advanced rooms, so everything that is not under the CySec 101, trust me, it is a little bit more advanced. So I would just recommend going through all the CySec 101 stuff if you're just starting out. But if you've kind of dabbled with this stuff already, if you've gotten your feet wet already, you can just move forward. So shared folders is where you see a complete list of the shares and folders that others can connect to. And this is, again, something else that is available to us under our computer management utility. So if we go back to our MS config and then go to computer management, which is what we have over here, we launch this piece right here. And under this, we have these pieces. So we've already looked at task scheduler, event viewer, and now shared folders. So when you click on this, it opens up the shares that you have available. So these are our shared folders on this particular computer. These are the sessions that might be open and the opened files that are being currently accessed. So these are our shared folders available from this specific computer. Each of these shared folders, you can right click on them and view the properties like permissions and who can access them. Under sessions, you'll see the list of users who are currently using it, and of course the open files that they are actually accessing. Local users and groups should be familiar with already, because we did it in Windows Fundamentals 1, which is the L user manager, the local user manager. In performance, you'll see a utility called Performance Monitor, which is another one of those things that is very similar to what you saw in the Task Manager. That will just show you what the system is currently running. So how much of the physical disk is being used, for example, the processing and the network interface, and the memory that's being used, the available RAM, etc., etc. So this is part of the performance of the computer, which is another big thing that you need to kind of have a gauge on, to have your thumb on the pulse of, so to speak. Device Manager allows you to view and configure the hardware, such as disabling any hardware attached to the computer, which could be the keyboard, the mice, the monitor, the network adapter, ports, print queue, so on and so forth. And you could also see under this what potential connections are there that shouldn't be there for. And this is something, again, that you can set up. This is an advanced recommendation, but you can set up a script or something in your alerts that something pops up that says, hey, there's been something other than the approved devices that was just connected to the computer ever since you last visited this computer, right? So you can keep track of what should be connected and what should not be connected. Storage houses the Windows Server backup and disk management, and we're only going to be looking at disk management in this particular case. But Windows Server backup is also important because it helps you back up the various images of your computer, images meaning all of the data. So an image could be everything on that computer, and it would be backed up on the server, or it would be backing up the server that you have. Disk management, again, could just be you have an image of the disk. So you have an image of the C drive, for example. Since we have a Windows Server operating system, there are utilities available that you'll typically not see in Windows 10. So let's actually go check out our Windows Server backup right here. So if I click on this, I should be able to see something that I don't. So let me see if I can open it up. We have the local backup. Oh, I see. So it's not Windows Server backup. It should be the disk management. And under disk management, this is the data that we actually do see right here. So we have the C drive and we have the system reserved, all part of the NTFS. And this is essentially the screenshot that we just looked at, right? So disk management is a system utility that enables you to perform advanced storage tasks like set up a new drive, extend a partition, shrink a partition, assign or change a drive letter, meaning change C drive to E or D to F or whatever. Extending a partition is essentially a compartment on the computer that is housing a certain bit of data or certain pages of data, and you can extend it, meaning make that specific compartment larger, make that container larger, or you can shrink it, meaning make it smaller. And this is typically not available in a lot of other environments, so it's useful that you can actually shrink a partition. Usually you can only extend a partition depending on the file system that you're using. And finally, we have services and applications, which is at the bottom right here, that allows us to see the routing and remote. Let's expand this. Routing and remote access services, and of course WMI control. So recalling from our previous task, it's a special type of application that runs in the background. That's what a service is. So you can do more than enable or disable it. So you can view the properties for the service, for example. So if we're looking at the VMware helper service, you can see the general, the logon, recovery, and dependencies of it, the service name, display name, description of it, the path to that specific executable, and what the status is, and if you can start or stop that service. WMI controls the Windows Management Instrumentation Service, and per Wikipedia, it allows scripting languages like VB Script or Windows PowerShell to manage Windows personnel, computers, and servers, both locally and remotely. Also offers a command line interface called Windows Management Instrumentation CLI or command line, and it's deprecated in Windows 10 version 21H1. Windows PowerShell supersedes this for WMI. So that's all you need to know about this. This is not, again, this is a super generic overview. You just need to be aware that these things exist and kind of generally where you can access them, so that for future labs and future videos, as we go deeper into Windows and where certain things would be located, you would know where to go. So the overall piece right here is that we're looking at computer management. So these are all the various tabs that are available inside of computer management. And then you can go and look at system tools, shared folders, device manager, etc., etc. And you can get access to Computer Manager from the msconfig, which is the system configuration utility. Or you can just look it up inside of search and just go into computer management, and it'll bring up the computer management tool for you, and you can access it that way. So if you know the name of what you're looking for, a lot of times you can just access it by just searching for it, and it's a much quicker access time. So a couple of questions here. What is the command to open computer management? And it's comp mgmt msc, and this is the name of the MSC file, not the full path. So the way that you can find that is by going to the system configuration, go to computer management, click on it, and then you see that this is the command that you can launch, or you can just type computer management the way you just saw. So at what time every day is the Google Update Task Machine UA asked that is configured to run? So that's something that we're going to find under Task Scheduler. So if we go under Task Scheduler and expand it, we should see the library, and then under that we have a few things that are supposed to run, and one of them is the Update Manager, and it says at 6:15 a.m. every day it'll repeat every hour for the duration that it's running. And this is the name of it, which is the update task machine UA. And 6:15 a.m. is the time daily that it's supposed to run. And finally, what is the name of the hidden folder that is shared? So let's go and find that. It should be under our shareds. And so if we click on shared folders, if we go to shares and then go over here, let's see, we have a share name that shows up, which is the shared folder. And if I click on shares, or if I click on shared folders, shares, I mean, I guess this is it, but it doesn't seem to be hidden. I don't know why it's saying that it's hidden. So if I click on this, is it hidden? Share permissions, everyone, security. Yeah, I don't know where the hidden piece of this came from, but it is a hidden folder, evidently, that is being shared, which is our shared folder. And there we go. That's all we got. That's all she wrote. So moving on to our next piece here, which is the system information, sysinfo. This is another tool that's available on the msconfig. So sysinfo msinfo32 includes a tool called Microsoft System Information. This gathers information about your computer and displays a comprehensive view of your hardware, system components, and software environment that you can use to diagnose computer issues. So the system summary gives you hardware resources, components, and software environment, like so. It has the left pane, and you can expand any of these or double click them to open them. And then you have the hardware resources that's not for the average computer user. So if you want to learn more about this, you can obviously go to the Microsoft page, but it has conflicts in sharing, forced hardware, input-output systems, the memory, so on and so forth. Under components, you can see specific information about the hardware devices installed on the computer. So some don't show any information, but some sections do. For example, the display and the input, right? So you have the components for multimedia, which is your audio and video codecs. There would be a CD-ROM if there was one, sound device, displays, Input would be the keyboard and the pointing device, which is the mouse. The network adapter, then you have the storage, you have the display. Where do we have display? Display doesn't show anything for us over here, at least in this screenshot. But you can have more information expanded for each one of those things and then get the details of that. And then you have software environment, which essentially has all the software that's baked into the OS and the stuff that you've also installed. And you can see the environment variables and the network connections, which are actually very important. So environment variables are very useful. To know what the environment variables are, that would actually be very, very useful. So let's go to the MS info, the system info, and try to pull that up, which is right here, MS info. So we're going to launch this thing. And then what I want to see is actually our environment variables. So look at all these environment variables. So this means that if you launch any of these, so the path for this, for example, would be a system tool that can access the user profile. All of these things are the environment variables themselves, right? So you have the essential variable designation, and then you have the path to the variable or the value of the variable. And for us, if we did the temp folder for system root temp, this would take us, if you remember from the first Windows Fundamentals video, the last one that we just did, anything inside the parentheses will be replaced by the actual name of the thing. So if I went and searched that inside of my, let me see if I can right click on this or open this. I can't. So if I open up the File Explorer, for example, and try to look for what we just have right there by typing it inside of this path that we have at the top right here. So let me kind of make this a little bit easier accessible. So system root / temp, right? So if I actually do parentheses, or not parentheses, excuse me, percentage, system root percentage, and then do a / and then do temp, you can see that it already starts filling this out for me. And I do that, and I open it up, and you see that it actually takes me to the path. So the system root in this particular case is this PC, local disk, Windows, and then temp. That's the full path for system root. So that's what that variable stands for. It takes you and does a bunch of different things in that specific category for you. And then finally, it ends you up at the temp folder. So the environment variables are actually very handy. They're very useful, and this is where you can find them under the system information, MS info, under the software environment. So super, super useful. I love it actually, and I think it's very good for you to know. So let's make sure that we can continue from where we left off. So Where the environment variables was briefly touched on, we actually just talked about it. They store information about the operating system environment. It includes details such as the OS path, the number of processes used, and the location of the temporary folders. They store data that is used by the OS and other programs. For example, Winder environment variable contains the location of the Windows installation directory. Programs can query the value of this variable to determine where the Windows operating system or files are located. So if you click on it, you can see all of the variables as we just did. Another method is to go to the control panel, system security, system, advanced system settings, environment variables, or setting system about the environment variable. So these are the two various paths that you can take if you don't want to go through the msconfig tool to access it quickly. But environment variables can be accessed through these various paths, as you can see right here. So it's very, very useful. And then inside of that, you have the system variables, which are the various tools that you can use for writing scripts or accessing data or paths quicker. That's essentially it. So the detour is over. Let's redirect the attention to MS-Info and pick up where we left off. So MS-Info, there is a search bar, and you can go and search for something inside of it. So if I go back to MS-Info and right here, go to here and find what? So they said to search for IP address. So if I search for IP address, I will get, hopefully, a bunch of different types of data, including IP address not available, IP subnet not available, default IP gateway not available. So the value for those specific pieces are not available. And this particular information, it says search selected category only. So if we do that and search that, and let's see what we can find. Okay, so a few things here, right? So just to give you a good idea, we're searching this specific category. That's why this is important right here. They have a lowercase version of this, but when I did that, it didn't show me anything. It said nothing was found. So I actually had to make a case-sensitive version of it, or at the very least, I thought I did. And it showed it to me over here as not available. But if we actually don't have this selected category, if we do like a full search of the system summary and we look for the IP address, it should, there we go. There you go. That's where it is. But there is something that will ultimately give you the IP address of the network that you're on and give you some information. I actually just found it. It's so weird that it's not allowing me to look at it over here or see it anymore. Find next, or maybe that's what it was. So I need to do find next again. There you go. So if you keep clicking, it'll take you to ultimately the value that actually has something. So IP address in this particular case does give us an IP address, whereas the one that was up here is not available. So there are different searches. So there are multiple values for that specific search term, IP address, and that was allowed to give us finally the IP address of the computer that we were on. So you can actually search for whatever you're looking for in the system info by going to the little search bar at the bottom right there. Okay, so here we go. What is the command to open system information? That is msinfo.exe, as we already saw. What is listed under the system name? So if we go to here and try to find the system name, should be available for us by going through this. So let me actually go to here and just do a system name. All right, to be able to find it, I just searched for it and I removed the search selected category so I can search through all of the data points that we have here. And it is right there, system name as THM WinFund2, which we actually have over here. So under environment variables, what is the value for ComSpec? So now we're going to go to environment variables and we're going to delete this piece at the bottom right here just so we can see everything. And then what we're looking for is ComSpec, which is right here. ComSpec, yada, 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 and you can get that and you can put that over here. Now the challenge is that you can't right click it and you can't copy it. So you would have to manually type that out. So that's all I got for you as far as environment variables and what we got under system information. So let us go into the resource monitor. Yet another tool in our system configuration panel. The resource monitor displays per process and aggregate CPU, memory, disk, and network usage information. In addition to providing details about which processes are using individual file handles and modules, advanced filtering allows users to isolate the data related to one or more processes, start, stop, pause, and resume services, and close unresponsive applications from the user interface. It also, this is a lot, okay? So essentially what we can do is get any detail about any resource on the computer. And from that, you'll be able to pull up other information and make a variety of changes. How about that? So you can monitor any resource and make a variety of changes about the various resources on your computer. And this could be the stuff that's running in the background, and it could potentially be things that are running in the foreground, right? The software that you actually have visual access to. So in the Overview tab, ResMon, Resource Monitor, has 4 sections: CPU, disk, network, and memory. And you can see that right here. The same 4 sections have corresponding tabs across the top. Each tab has an additional information for each. An image is shown right here. So you can see the additional information, meaning so if you actually click on it, there's other things under that CPU, right? So at the very, very top, this is what you see is the overview. But then if you actually go to CPU, for each one of the processes and services, so on and so forth, there's extra details that are associated with it. For same thing for memory, same thing for the disk, and same thing for the network. So Resource Monitor has a pane at the far right, and it shows a graphical interview in real time for each section. And let's go see that because it doesn't show it to us for this particular example in those screenshots. So if I actually open, whoops, I closed it. Give me 1 second. All right, so here we go. There it is. And this is the pane that they're talking about on the far right that actually shows you a real-time graphical data of what's being done and how much of the CPU is being used and the disk and the network, so on and so forth. So this is what it is. If I click on CPU, it minimizes those things and only shows you the stuff that's relevant to CPU. Same thing with the RAM and etc. So it's actually very, very useful. It's the Resource Monitor. And it's getting in the nitty gritty of system administration, and you most likely won't need this unless you're really, really going into SysAdmin stuff. And when you go into your job as a security analyst and you start noticing a big slowdown of the processing power of a server, for example, and you want to know what just happened and what is taking up so much of the processing power, this is where you would come to see what is eating up all of your resources. So the question that we have here is, what's the command to open the resource monitor, which is resmon.exe, which if you kind of have noticed the pattern right here, they give you the acronym here, and then based on that, you just add the .exe at the end of it, and that becomes the name that they're looking for, right? It's either an exe file or a different type of file, but essentially they give you the acronym for it, and then you can find it. But if you wanted to really see it, you go to the system configuration, and then from there, once you click on Resource Monitor, you can see at the very end, that's the name of the executable. So there we go. Now let's move on to the command prompt, which is, I bet you guessed it, another one of the msconfig, the system configuration tools. The CMD, the command prompt, is another one of the sysconfig tools, or msconfig, I should say. This, for me, I love it, but they say that it can seem daunting at first because I guess when you just see something like this and it's like just a black screen with text on it, it doesn't seem welcoming. But it was literally the only way that you can interact with the operating system. And when you're dealing with Linux servers, in a lot of cases, it's literally just a command line. You don't get a graphic user interface. And when you get used to the GUI, it becomes daunting. Or if you start with using the GUI, it becomes daunting. When the GUI was introduced, people could do complex tasks with a few clicks of a button without actually entering commands and knowing scripting. But even though a computer can still interact via the command prompt, and it's actually much faster if you know what you're doing. We're literally going to go through a few commands here, but this just by itself can be a series of training exercises, and we're actually going to go through a few of the separate rooms as well that go into the command line and Windows PowerShell and so on and so forth. So the command host name will output the computer name. Who am I will output the name of the logged in user, and then you can do ipconfig to look at the IP address and the DNS settings and everything that's associated with the computer that you're on. These are just a few of the commands. To get a help manual, you can do the /?, not to be confused with /. So you can do ipconfig /?. You can do who am I /?. You can do essentially any of the tool names / and it'll give you the help menu for that. The command prompt screen is CLS to clear it. In Windows, in Linux, excuse me, it's clear. In Windows, it's CLS. Netstat is another one. It'll display protocol statistics like the current TCP/IP connections that are going on, as well as the various flags that are associated with them. The structure tells us that we can run it alone or with parameters like these parameters that you have at the bottom. So these are considered parameters, arguments, options, flags. There's a variety of different names that you can use to determine what those things are. When any of these things are appended, netstat in this case, the output of the tool changes. So this doesn't apply to every tool. This is specific just to netstat, but a variety of tools have their various options. They have flags or arguments that you can attach to them when you run it to get a different output of results. The net command is primarily used to manage network resources, and it supports subcommands. So if you type net without a subcommand, the output will show the syntax of the root command, showing a few of the subcommands that you can potentially use. For the net command, if you want to help the manual, same thing. It's not going to work. So in this case, you need to do is just type net help, and that's actually what I'm used to. So either net help or net-h, or again, just depends on the tool itself. But when you type in net right here, it shows you what the options are, and one of them are help. So you can do net help, and it'll bring you the help menu, and then it brings all the various options that you can run, and it'll tell you what it actually can do. So net help names explains different types of names, net help services, list the services, so on and so forth. So if you want to see the help information for net user, the command would be net help user, right? And that's essentially it for the series of commands that we have for the CMD. We can get the help information for other net subcommands like local group, use, share, and session. And you can look at a lot of that stuff at this particular link, which is, of course, the documentation link for Windows CMD, which is massive. And each one of these things has its own series of subcategories that you can go into. So it's pretty large, but it's very, very useful to have those types of resources bookmarked, or at least know what you're looking for so that you can Google them and find them. So in system configuration, what is the full command for internet protocol configuration? So in sysconfig, what is the full command for internet protocol configuration, which is right in the middle right here. And that is our full command. And you can see that it's actually an extension of the CMD executable that takes you to the ipconfig executable and gets that information for you. For the ipconfig command, how do you know, or how do you show detailed information? And you just do ipconfig all. So let's just run that real quick. So we're just going to do CMD. We're going to open that up, and then we can do ipconfig and /?, and it'll give us all of the tools. And then right here it says example ipconfig /all. It shows all the detailed information, and that's what you want. How do you show detailed information? ipconfig all. And I love the command line, honestly. I think once you actually get used to the command line, you won't want to do anything else. And what's interesting about it is that psychologically, when you think about being a hacker, this is what you think about. You think about the command line interface. You don't think about somebody clicking around and dragging and dropping items and things like that. You think about somebody sitting in front of a terminal and just typing a bunch of code, and next thing you know, they've taken over a computer or something like that. So last but not least, let us talk about the Registry Editor. This is the last tool that we're going to cover with the system configuration panel. The registry is one of the big things that we cover in all of the security analysis and pen testing exercises, because it is something that can be modified for malicious intent. It is a central hierarchical database that stores information necessary to configure the system for users, applications, and even hardware devices. It has profiles for each user, applications installed on the computer, and types of documents, property sheet settings for folders and applications, and what hardware exists on the system. The ports that are being used as well. So the registry is for advanced computer users. Making changes can affect normal computer operations, so just keep that in mind. We're not going to be doing anything like that. You just need to know where it is and what it looks like. And in incident response and digital forensics, we look at the registry editor as well as just registry data to try to find a bunch of information that may be relevant to what may have happened during that incident. So it is something to keep in mind that this is actually a very, very useful tool. So referring to the Microsoft documentation can give you much more information about your particular registry editor and the information itself and the various paths and locations of tools, resources, data, and everything that you would need for any given user. So the command to open the registry editor, as you guessed it, would be regedit32exe, which actually they didn't give us this piece right here. They only gave us regedit. So if we actually go into, let me just zoom out here. If we go back into our msconfig and open that up and then go to tools and then find the registry editor, we should be able to find the information that we need, which is regedit32exe right there. And that's it. That's all we got for our particular room today. So the tools that we used in this particular room were all part of the msconfig utility. And throughout the room, we will look for, commands and shortcuts that you could access those various utilities under the msconfig, meaning you don't have to actually launch msconfig to run those things. So you can go to the Windows administrative tools and see where you can find them. You can also go to the Windows system and see where you can find them, or you can just Google or talk to Gemini or various AIs and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do on Windows. What would be the tool name that I would need to use to try to find the information that I need? And it will tell you what you can potentially use, or it will give you exactly what you can use, and you can get the information that you need. So fairly straightforward if you really kind of get a hang of where to find these things and how to use them. And that's all we got for this particular room. If you found this video useful, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out. And of course, go check out everything else that we got on our channel, because we got a bunch of great stuff on this channel. And you can click on this little search button right here, search for what you need, and there's most likely a video that exists for you. This is a channel about cybersecurity and hacking, so just keep that in mind. This is not a system administration channel. Even though we just talked about something that's very basic, which is Windows, we did look at it from the perspective of cybersecurity. So like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment if you have any questions. I will respond to all the comments that come in, and specifically if it's a big question and requires a lot of explanation, I will create a video in response to that question. This entire path, actually, the Cybersecurity 101 training series, was in response to a comment that we got from one of our users. So definitely like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment. Just say hi if you want, say thanks, whatever, ask a question, anything that you got, it would be great. And real quick, there's also the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community, which is the premier YouTube community for security professionals and hackers. There's a lot of great perks that are associated with it. If you come in as a cyber supporter, you will get access to the Discord channel that gives you me and all of our advanced members. If you come in as one of the advanced members, you get Python automations, you get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, you get the Discord chats for each individual tier. There's the monthly lives that we do. There's so much stuff that's associated with the perks of these channels, of this membership, that I think you really won't be disappointed, and there's something for everybody. So check it out, watch the 14-minute video, get all the details, or just click this little read more button right here, and then you can get the details from the description of the video and find what you may be useful, or find what may be useful to you. In any case, I think you will actually love Hackaholics Anonymous, and I encourage you to check it out, the premier YouTube community for security professionals and hackers. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace. Later.